There is a certain hour of the night when the house seems to inhale and hold its breath, when the clock forgets to count and the light along the baseboards turns thin as paper. In that hour, a whisper crosses the inner room where no one else can enter. It does not arrive like thunder or the crash of doors. It rises the way a sprout rises under earth blind, certain, careful with its own tender power. It says only this enough, and though the world does not notice, the ground inside begins to shift. I did not know that strength could begin like that. So small, I almost stepped on it while reaching for distractions. I thought awakening would announce itself with a banner, a sudden clarity, a chorus of certainties. Instead, it came as a soft refusal to keep abandoning myself. It came after a series of quiet betrayals. I had normalized smiling when something in my chest wanted to wince, nodding when my boundaries needed a sturdy, loving no. I began to feel the ache of every time I had bartered pieces of myself for comfort, approval, belonging. The ache did not accuse me. It simply refused to be ignored. Pain, it turns out, is a teacher that does not raise its voice, only its hand. In those first days, I mistook weariness for weakness. I thought the heaviness meant I was failing at life's choreography. But under that heaviness lived a pulse older than my explanations. It trembled awake the way a small animal trembles after being startled, unsure whether it is safe to come out. When it did, it carried with it a troubling mirror. I saw the anger I had paved over with competence, the desires I had dismissed as inconvenient, the body I had treated as enemy territory rather than a home. My face in that mirror was mine, but not the version I had posed for. It was mine the way the ocean is itself weathered, secret, alive. Somewhere in those nights, Jung's language found me not as theory, but as shelter, individuation. This difficult pilgrimage toward the wholeness of being did not ask me to become a mythic heroine or a brighter brand of myself. It invited something braver, a return, not to innocence, but to intimacy with my own depths. In the return, an old inheritance lifted its head, the wound that women carry in the body of history, the way desire has been trained to apologize, the way the voice learns to whisper even when no one is listening. I could feel the lineage of it coiled beneath my ribs, a story passed down in careful silences. Touching it did not destroy me. It simply insisted that I stop treating my life as a negotiation. When you begin to come back to yourself, the world does not always clap. Structures built on your compliance tremble. Relationships adjusted to your self-erasure become uneasy. Love, if it is real, learns new shapes. Love, if it is a bargain, seeks new customers. I did not become hard. I became present, and presence has a way of making every false thing blink. I no longer translated my needs into acceptable metaphors. I no longer dimmed to match a room. The transformation was not dramatic to the eye, it was seismic to the soul. In that quiet tectonic shift, I discovered that solitude is not the absence of company, but the presence of self. It is the clearing where the first honest conversation begins. I wish I could say it was simple from there. It was not. It was human. The path was a braid of beauty and bewilderment, a series of thresholds I crossed with shaking hands. Yet, with every step, something true gathered weight enough to stand. I learned to hold my contradictions with open palms, to greet the shadow not as a villain, but as a guide who speaks in riddles, asking me to listen with more than my ears. And slowly, the old armor loosened. I understood that strength is not a wall, but a soft animal that learns to stay when thunder walks the field. In staying, it grows. There comes a moment, quiet and almost tender, when the heart that has been learning to stand alone encounters another presence unexpected, magnetic, unsettling in its simplicity. It does not arrive like lightning, though it stirs the same electricity. It comes as recognition, as if two familiar strangers suddenly remember they have met before, somewhere beyond this lifetime's geography. His eyes, perhaps, or the cadence of his voice, feel like a doorway left slightly open, and you walk through it without realizing you've crossed a line. At first, his nearness feels like sunlight after a long winter. He listens, he sees, he calls forth the parts of you you'd thought were buried. There is laughter where there was once silence, a warmth that coaxes color back into forgotten corners. But just as you begin to trust it, just as your guard softens, something changes. The very closeness that once felt healing begins to tremble with contradiction. One day, he leans in with tenderness that seems to know your soul by name. The next, he vanishes into the distance, leaving behind echoes and questions that won't sit still. You wonder if you imagined it all. How can someone reach for you with such sincerity? Then recoil as though love were a flame that burns too bright to touch, yet deep inside, beneath the storm of confusion, another truth stirs. This isn't disinterest. This is fear, not yours, but his. The fear of being seen, of being undone, of opening doors that were sealed long ago. You sense it not in his words, but in the tremor of his absence, the restless pull in his silence. The heart knows what logic tries to deny that love has touched him, but he does not yet know how to hold it. Jung once said that what we most need to find will be found where we least wish to look. And often, love is precisely that mirror showing us not only our capacity for tenderness, but also our terror of it. When a man who has been armored by pain begins to feel again, it is not liberation he first encounters, but panic. The armor that once protected him now suffocates, yet he cannot remove it without exposing every unhealed wound beneath. So he does the only thing he knows: he retreats. It is not cruelty that drives him away. It is survival. He runs not from you, but from the magnitude of what you awaken in him. To love someone caught in that inner war is to live between the visible and the unseen. His words may falter, his eyes may dart away, but his body betrays him with gestures too honest to disguise. The way he orients himself toward you in a crowded room, the way his voice softens when he says your name, the way his laughter, unguarded, carries a tremor of relief as though for one brief moment the fortress forgot it had walls. These are not tactics of seduction, they are confessions of the soul disguised as small movements of the flesh. If you learn to read beyond language, you begin to see that love often speaks first through the body. It lingers in proximity, in the invisible current between two people who pretend not to notice that they are already orbiting the same quiet gravity. Sometimes it's in the way he remembers something you said once, something small, and folds it into a gesture days later without even realizing. Care, it turns out, is the first dialect of love, not declarations, but presence, not promises, but small acts of remembering. And yet, the more he feels, the more his fear grows teeth. Because for him, love is not a refuge, it is a risk. It threatens to dismantle the scaffolding that kept him safe. To be loved by someone who is still at war with his own vulnerability is to hold both tenderness and distance in the same hand. You learn to stay centered even as the current pulls at you, to love without losing your axis. For in his hesitation, you see reflected your own old fears, how often you too have run from what asked you to be real. There's a strange ache in loving someone who both reaches and retreats. It is not the ache of rejection, though it feels like it. It is the ache of watching another soul wrestle with its own reflection. You begin to see the rhythm of his fear, how it rises whenever tenderness draws too near, how it hides behind excuses dressed in reason. I'm not ready, he says. I don't want to hurt you. And though the words sound like distance, you can feel that they are actually the sound of a door trembling on its hinges. Fear speaks in riddles. Love, if patient, learns to translate them. At first, you may want to argue with the fear, to reason it away. You want to say, "But I am safe. I am not the one who hurt you." Yet the more you reach for logic, the further he drifts, because love that is born in fear cannot be argued into peace. It must be felt into safety. You begin to understand that the task is not to convince him, but to remain anchored in yourself, to hold presence steady enough for his chaos to settle without swallowing you whole. You are not here to rescue him. You are here to stay true to your own center while his storm rages and clears. And there are signs, always, signs that the love he denies with words is quietly at work beneath the surface. He shows up without needing a reason. He checks if you've eaten. He listens in that way people listen when they are learning to care more than they expected to. He does not call it love, but his actions betray him. His care is not strategic, it's instinctive. It's how the heart behaves when it no longer has the energy to pretend indifference, even in retreat. There is an invisible thread between you, woven not of promises but of attention, fragile, luminous, undeniably real. Sometimes he minimizes these gestures, as though ashamed of his own tenderness. "It's nothing," he says. But you know better. You feel it in the silence that follows, in the way his voice falters when he tries to sound casual. You recognize the truth Jung once wrote, that the unconscious expresses itself not only in dreams, but in the smallest movements of the body. A glance held a heartbeat too long. A sigh released the moment you look away. A nervous laugh that hides more than it reveals. The body is a translator the mind cannot censor. In those quiet translations, love begins to speak before it knows its own name. Still, there comes a point when even tenderness becomes too much for him. The intimacy, the reflection, the way your presence softens his armor, it all touches the part of him that remembers old pain. Suddenly he grows distant again. His messages slow, his warmth cools, his gaze becomes a wall. You feel the hollow space widen between you, and it hurts deeply, because you are just beginning to exhale. You are just beginning to believe that maybe this time, love would not require endurance. But love, as Jung would remind us, is not an escape from the shadow, it is its awakening. He is not running from you. He is running from the part of himself that your love has illuminated. For some men, that light is unbearable at first. It calls out every hidden wound, every childhood ache that said you are not safe to love. The mind reacts the only way it knows how, by closing. But the closing is not the end. It is a pause, an involuntary defense, a gasp of the soul learning to breathe in thinner air. You cannot chase him through that darkness. You cannot coax him into readiness with promises or pain. Your work now is sacred stillness, to let his absence teach you what kind of presence you want to become. To learn that love is not measured by proximity, but by the steadiness with which you refuse to abandon yourself, even when someone else retreats. Because real love does not mean never being left. It means not leaving yourself when you are. Time passes differently when someone you love has gone quiet. The days stretch wider, softer at the edges, like a landscape wrapped in fog. You find yourself listening for messages that never arrive, replaying moments that once glowed with meaning. And yet, within that silence, something begins to shift. The ache that once felt unbearable starts to take on a different texture, not softer, exactly, but clearer. You begin to see that what feels like absence might actually be a kind of alchemy, the transformation of longing into understanding. It hurts, yes, but the pain begins to reveal its purpose. Because when he disappeared, you were left face to face with yourself again, not the self shaped by his gaze or your desire, but the self that existed long before you tried to be chosen. In that vast quiet, your old patterns come to light. You see how easily you had once bent to fit someone's uncertainty, How quickly you offered explanations for their silence. How often you mistook emotional labor for love. But this time is different. This time you stay. You sit with the silence until it stops feeling like punishment and begins to sound like truth. In the language of Jung, this is the descent into shadow, the confrontation with everything you once avoided seeing, the loneliness, the unmet needs, the hunger for reassurance, the fear of being too much, one by one. They step out from behind the curtain, asking not to be fixed, but to be felt. And as you listen, something extraordinary happens. The pain stops being the enemy. It becomes the doorway. Through it, you begin to sense the outline of your own soul, vast, unbroken, quietly radiant beneath all the noise. And perhaps, somewhere else, far from your knowing, he too is wrestling with his shadow. Love has a way of exposing both sides of a bond, not to destroy, but to awaken. The man who once ran now finds that his distance is not relief, but hunger. In his solitude, the same mirror appears, only now. It shows his fear stripped of disguise. He begins to see that his withdrawal was not strength, but avoidance, that every wall he built has only kept him exiled from the warmth he secretly longed for. This realization, painful and unsentimental, is the beginning of his transformation. When a man finally stops running, it doesn't look like a movie scene. There are no grand declarations, no cinematic gestures of redemption. Sometimes it's as simple as a message that arrives without agenda. How have you been, or a small act of presence, steady and wordless? It's the energy that changes first, not the conversation. The fear that once filled the space between you softens, replaced by a quiet willingness to stay. And when he returns, it is not the same man who left. Something in him has cracked open, not from your insistence, but from his own reckoning with truth. He no longer speaks from the armor of certainty. He speaks from the tremor of humility. I don't have all the answers, he admits, but I want to try. Those words, though simple, carry the weight of an entire inner war. They signal the integration of shadow the moment the ego no longer fights the self. And for the first time, you see not the fantasy of who he could be, but the human before you, imperfect, still learning, but present. You realize that love, at its highest form, is not about saving or proving. It is about witnessing another's becoming while remaining faithful to your own. It is here that real intimacy begins, not in perfection, but in the shared courage to stay awake. Two souls meeting not to complete each other, but to remind each other of what wholeness looks like. And in that meeting, something ancient exhales. The old wound, personal, ancestral, collective, begins to close, not because it has been erased, but because it has been seen. It is strange how quietly love matures once both souls have stopped running. There is no fanfare, no triumphant scene that declares, "We made it." Instead, there is presence. Two people sitting in the soft hum of ordinary light, no longer measuring time by the distance between messages or the tension of uncertainty. The love that once trembled now breathes, slower, deeper. It no longer seeks to impress or to heal by force. It simply is a steady current beneath the day's small noise, asking nothing but truth in return. This stage is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of the real one. Because loving with awareness means facing, together, the ruins left by fear. It means acknowledging the scars that memory still guards like fragile relics. He is different now, though he may not have words for it. There's a stillness in him, a willingness to meet your gaze and stay there. He no longer minimizes what he feels or hides behind distractions. You notice how he listens not to respond, but to understand. How his care has become intention. How his steadiness has replaced the chaos that once defined his love. But more importantly, you are different too. You no longer love from emptiness or proof. You love from fullness, the kind that comes after walking through your own dark. You know now that love is not about merging, but about mirroring the divine in one another. It is not about rescue, but recognition. The tenderness you once directed outward now includes yourself, naturally, without performance. You can finally rest inside your own presence without fearing that solitude means abandonment. You have learned that connection is sacred only when it honors individuality. Together, you begin to build not a perfect life, but an honest one. There are still disagreements, still shadows that appear in the corners, but now they are met with awareness rather than war. Silence no longer feels like punishment, but space. Vulnerability no longer feels like danger, but trust. And when he falters, because he still does, sometimes you no longer lose yourself trying to hold him. You simply stand beside him, both of you aware that love is a daily act of choosing to stay open, choosing to stay kind, choosing to stay. In Jung's language, this is the moment of integration when the fragments of shadow and light begin to coexist in harmony. The man who once fled from his feelings now learns to carry them with dignity. The woman who once silenced her truth now speaks it with grace. Neither tries to become perfect, both strive to become whole, and that wholeness, imperfect and alive, becomes the quiet miracle of their shared existence. You realize, at last, that love's truest form is not possession, not certainty, not even eternal promise. It is awareness, the willingness to see and be seen, to walk with another soul without closing your eyes. Love that has passed through shadow knows that beauty and pain often share the same breath. It does not seek to avoid the storm, but to stand within it with open arms. It understands that vulnerability is not a weakness to be fixed, but a language through which the soul speaks most honestly. And so, when the day ends, you find peace in the simplest of gestures, a hand resting over yours, a quiet exhale, a shared glance that says we're here, still learning, still real. You understand now that the purpose of love was never to complete you, but to return you to yourself, to remind you that you were always whole, even when you forgot. If you have walked this journey through the ache, the silence, the shadow, and the light, know that you are not alone. Every soul that awakens leaves a small lamp burning for others, still finding their way home. If this reflection spoke to something deep within you, take a moment to breathe, to feel, to share, like, comment, and subscribe to keep this circle of reflection alive so that together we can continue exploring the tender art of becoming whole.